Thank you, Tanish, for joining us. That brings us to the discussion that we have today. Can Ayodhya become a global religious spot for India? Joining us, Yudhishthir Govindas, who's the country director of communications and national spokesperson of ISKCON India. We have Jyoti Mayal, who's the president of the Travel Agents Association of India. We have Indraneel Dasgupta, founder and managing director of Tirth India. And we also have Siddesh Joglekar, author and CEO at Programming Hub. Thank you, all of you, for joining us on this discussion. Mr. Dasgupta, let me start with you. Ayodhya, according to Jeffries and many other surveys that I was looking at, is positioned to be this global pilgrimage spot. It's expected to see around 50 million to 100 million tourists annually. Now, Ayodhya, we know, has a history, it has culture, and it also has a very powerful story of Ram that has traveled to many countries. What else do you think Ayodhya needs to become a global religious spot, and what did we lack till now?
Good evening, ma'am. Jai Hind and Jai Shri Ram. Ayodhya, this emphasizes the magic, according to the magic that is India. Today, what's happening in India is magic it was long due from our forefathers, from time immemorial. This was due to us. And today, what we see in Ayodhya was just a culmination of the efforts put together. At the same time, ma'am, the influx of tourists, like you just put, this is not tourism. This is an emotional bond. This goes beyond tourism. This goes beyond people coming. It's an emotional bond. People from all strata, all society, every caste, every class. We come here. They want to come to Ayodhya. There will definitely be a huge influx, like you mentioned. So there's going to be a huge influx of tourists. The infrastructure, all these days, religious and spiritual tourism, it is perhaps the only form of tourism where it's a pull tourism. You don't have to advertise for religious tourism. People come on their own, knowing the hardships. You have to stand in queues. And India is not a country, according to me, it's a continent. So somebody traveling from the north to the south is already lost. Where will I stay? And every other form of tourism, has some fun attached to it, a family vacation or something. But religious tourism always has some trepidation of fear attached to it. How big is going to be the queue? Where's the VIP line? And Ayodhya emphasizes this. Today, Ayodhya has shown the world that India can make it happen. And today, with a little bit more in infrastructure, sure, it's going to be developing soon. And we as citizens have a duty too to help in the infrastructure development of this of a place like this. Every religious place, including Ayodhya, will see a huge drive in tourists. It was always there. It's from time immemorial. It's going to just increase with time. The infrastructure, as of today, does lack, but it's our duty too to make it better.
Okay, let me bring Jyoti Mayal here, because it's an important point that you're making, that religious tourism, unlike other forms of tourism, is largely self-driven. The fun element to it is probably not as much as it is there in other parts, other types of tourism. Jyoti, we know that there are these constant comparisons being made to Vatican City and Mecca, but if you look at numbers, 9 million people visit Vatican City in a year, and it's 20 million for Mecca. That's what the numbers say. Now, how does Ayodhya or popular Indian religious sites like, say, the Golden Temple, Tirupati or Bodh Gaya, or for that matter even Varanasi or Madurai Meenakshi, fare in comparison? Can you give us an idea as to what the numbers look like, and where are we? Are these comparisons even valid?
Thanks, Vasudha, for having me here. So just to share my thoughts, religious tourism, people have a strong penchant, towards spiritual and religious tourism, especially where India is concerned, the Indians are concerned. It's an emotion. Like, it's always said, spiritual tourism is more like emotion. And, these sentiments, of course, have a very strong religious beliefs. And it's very crucial role that we all need to play collectively to see what the numbers are going to be driven. The numbers are increasing. If you see the Indian tourism towards spiritual and religious tourism is growing a lot. Even as per last year, it was like, it has more than doubled. It was less 60 lakhs that what we really came up, 65,000 crores that we earned in 2021. And today, last year, it was like 1 crore 34 lakhs and 543, some odd figure that came into place. So you say that religious tourism is already on the rise. And this structure which has come up, the Ayodhya temple, the Ram temple, what everyone has been waiting for since years and years, I think it's going to be a huge attraction for not only Indians, but everyone. Every Indian will certainly go once at least in their lifetime to visit a place like this. And of course, from outside, we have a huge diaspora of Indians abroad. They all would like to come and visit. So those numbers actually would reach that 9 million and 200 million very quickly. If we really get the infrastructure in place, if we have the connecting flights in place, and of course the last mile connectivity needs to be there. So if everything comes into place, these numbers are only going to grow. And we are seeing that, Varanasi has grown by numbers, leaps and bounds. So same thing is going to continue with Ayodhya. And it's one of the best things that could happen, because you just spoke about Vatican and Saudi, how they sell. It's not about just religion. It's not only religious tourism that's going to come. It's also about the studying and educational programs that's going to come through for tourism, for spiritual tourism. So there's a huge value link.
So the numbers are huge. That's what even the tourism ministry numbers say. Mr. Joglekar, it's an important point that Jyoti is making, because the numbers are growing of religious and spiritual tourism in India. But there is also this gap between, say, holiday tourism, medical tourism and religious tourism. I know it's not fair to, compare that. But when it comes to spending, what is the importance of religious tourism amongst both international and national religious tourists to India? And do you see these numbers helping in boosting the overall tourist economy? Because if you look at the numbers, in 2022, the footfall in Varanasi saw an 8-fold increase as compared to tourists in Goa. So clearly the numbers paint a very optimistic picture. But when it comes to spending, do you think that this can also lead to some positive changes?
Absolutely. I think spending will go up. The reasons for this are manifold. One is, look at the location of Ayodhya itself. The location of Ayodhya is right in the middle of Uttar Pradesh, and perhaps the most densely populated area in the world. Two, the kind of infrastructure spends that you talked about, you gave some staggering numbers up front, both on the air as well as rail side. That is going to help in boosting these numbers. Three, as people come to Ayodhya, they will spend time, they will go around. Within 250-kilometer radius, you have Lucknow, you have Kanpur, you have Varanasi as well, quite close by. So that is going to help. And there is infrastructure to go around as well. There are some good highways built in UP in the past 5 to 10 years, and that is all going to help. Comparing religious tourism with medical tourism might be a little bit premature. We might look at some data and maybe have a better discussion then. But I think religious tourism is here to grow.
Right. Mr. Das, Ramayana has a very powerful story, and it's integral to the way many Indians conduct our lives. And, it's very, common men and women have a special connect with the Ramayana. From Thailand to Cambodia, we've seen versions of it. In fact, every time we go to Sri Lanka, we also make a visit to Sita Lanka, right? So ISKCON temples are all over the world, and you see devotees coming in large numbers. Tell us, what are the primary requirements to enable a city to become a global spiritual or religious tourist spot? What are the checks and balances that you put in place? And how do you sort of tell the world that, we have a story to tell and you have to come visit us?
Thank you, Vasudha, for having me. The most important thing is we need to differentiate between the points that, unlike other forms of tourism which are driven by some sort of interest in going and visiting, but this the religious tourism is actually driven by something much deeper. It is the spiritual and the emotional connect that people have with the place and with the deity residing in that place. So Ayodhya, definitely, as you have already mentioned, is not just for Hindus or not just for Indians, but it's a global phenomena. So we have right now devotees here in our ISKCON camp from Hungary, from Germany, Slovenia, America, right now camping here in Ayodhya, trying to have darshan of Lord Ram Lala. And for any place to develop, like we at our ISKCON's world headquarters in Mayapur have ensured that we have the basic infrastructure in place, like the other panelists have been discussing. But along with that, you also have some very important elements of awareness generation of the sacred sites that are available there in different languages, making them popular, getting the people to know about them, the cleanliness, and also providing the basic space for people to stay. Right now, Ayodhya still needs some help, but definitely the government is working in that direction. From my interaction with a lot of residents here in the last few days that I've been moving around in Ayodhya, I see a tremendous change compared to the many years ago that I had visited Ayodhya. If you see the streets from Hanuman Gadi, you wouldn't be able to make out it from any other metropolitan city in India or even in other parts of the world. So that aspect of cleanliness, awareness generation is definitely coming up. And if it's promoted in a much bigger way by the Indian embassies in different parts, I think that'll give a big boost to Ayodhya.
Mr. Dasgupta, tell us about this new profile of people who are powering, this visit to religious places, because there are studies that also say that this rush is in some ways propelled by millennials and not just older senior citizens. So is India's youth traveling to pilgrimage centers more now? And how can India tap on that particular aspect of tourism?
Absolutely, ma'am. Spot on. When we started My Tirth India, we thought it was going to be for 30 and above. But ma'am, we've just seen a change, a huge sea change. We've had people 18 onwards. The interest in Indian culture, interest in Indian spirituality now transcends all age. You're absolutely right on this. And like Martin Luther King Jr. had said, ma'am, I travel the world as a tourist, but to India I come as a pilgrim. So India is a land of pilgrimage. Today or tomorrow, it's just a matter of time. Indian spiritual market is about 60% of the entire tourism market. And like somebody mentioned, it is the last mile connectivity, that is important, because no matter, you will get a hotel somewhere, you'll get a flight, you'll get a train, but the last mile connectivity of entering the temple. People are scared, and the linguistic language, everything problem, that mile connectivity, if it's solved, and the other infrastructure, if it's developed, religious tourism is already huge in numbers, 60% of the entire tourism market. Financially, this is the future of India and Indian tourism.
Right. Mr. Joglekar, there is this master plan for Ayodhya in place. We already saw that the airport and a brand new railway station came up. But can you tell us what is it that the government can do? Because, there are various departments here. There's a state government that is in charge of getting a lot of these places developed. There's a central government that puts in place a vision. Now, we have the central government scheme called Prashad that looks at identifying religious spots and developing them. In some states, you also have the HRNCE department that looks at coordinating with temples. So, what kind of, coordinated working is required here? And also, if you look at, Red Fort now, there is privatization, Dalmias are developing it. Do you think private players can also play a role in ensuring that there are better facilities for tourists?
Yes, absolutely. There is a lot to be done. The first thing that we can do is by learning from our own success stories. Think of Golden Temple. Think of Tirupati Temple. Think of the Kashi Vishwanath Temple at Varanasi. There is a lot to be learned by Ayodhya from these three examples, right? First, as you talked about, the facilities, the infrastructure, the last mile. A lot of these things have been discussed right now already. The most important part is going to be, to have a 5-year plan. It is not just about 22 January and 23rd January. It has to be about 5 years, 10 years. The kind of infrastructure push that is required, both at the global level as well as at the national level. Perhaps another big round of unlocking of tourists will happen when Ayodhya becomes an international airport. That will become a very important landmark in itself. Obviously the rest of the country is eagerly waiting to get connected to Ayodhya by rail or by train. And I think coordinating these things will require some amount of planning, will require some amount of discussion. But certainly, I think the demand is there. Right now it looks like a supply constrained economy, I would say, and that's a wonderful sign.
So that's, when it comes to development in Tirth Kshetras or religious places, there's always this dilemma because a lot of people feel that the religious, cultural, civilizational ethos would get disturbed. So too much development is not needed. That is what one section of people would always say. But, if you're looking at attracting foreign tourists, you need a certain kind of hotels to be in place, you need facilities. So how does one navigate that particular aspect? How does one balance this whole aspect of balancing development and also preserving the cultural and original ethos of a place like Ayodhya?
The places are being developed, and that's a very positive and a very welcoming step. But it's also important we preserve the sanctity of those places and the spiritual culture and the spiritual nature of those places. So for that to happen, we need to be respectful of the local traditions and the local customs while also having the basic infrastructure put in place. And that means also preserving the style, the nature of the localities, the buildings, the traditions. If you go to Kyoto in Japan, though it's one of the most developed economies in the world, but you still see its unique nature of Kyoto city still being preserved. And that is the nature that we need to adopt. So the tourists and pilgrims come, they are sensitive to the local traditions and culture. And when we have spirituality and sustainability working together, that's when the real transformation takes place.
Right. Jyoti, the average religious trip generates a bill of rupees 2,717 as opposed to rupees 15,000 spent by medical tourists who come to India. Of course, that comparison, like I said, may not be fair, but average spending on holiday travel is also double the expenditure on religious travel. How important in this context is, giving a boost to Ayodhya's local economy by creating, say, homestays, local jobs, and driving up consumption, and also, like Mr. Das said, sensitizing even tourists on the traditions of this place, and probably, also ensuring that your local youth get jobs?
No, that's perfectly right. I mean, it's a very correct thing to say that the sustainability has to stay, and ecotourism has to be developed. And, we just can't get into over tourism because of anything. First, we need to be equipped to handle the entire tourism structure, because like Mr. Das just said, that, that's the first thing that goes into anyone's experience, that you need to connect to the entire environment to bring out the best. So that has to happen. But this will automatically give also growth to the environment and to the localites. We've already seen that there's been a huge rise where employment is concerned. Even before the temples really started up, we've had already around 25 to 30,000 people who have already been absorbed. And there are so many new avenues opening for local people. So I think that's the first aspect that comes out with people, because it has to be promoted in every way. But we cannot forget over tourism. We cannot get sustainability. We need to bring it with inclusiveness. So all these structures need to be put in place, and the governance has to be very correct to give the experience. The experience has to come in the right format. If the experience is lost, then there is no use of anything coming out the best, and it's not going to happen. The expenditure, anyone who comes for religious tourism will automatically cover the entire and the other parts of the country. So it's an add-on for someone, and it's an add-on for people who are coming into India to look at the Ayodhya and the religious tourism aspect, but also move forward and move ahead. So
Right.
you have a huge connect to bring in conferences, MICE, adventure, everything, every aspect of tourism, and linking it to religious tourism also.
Right.
Because tourism is, it's a huge value chain. Again, I keep saying that it's a huge value chain, and we need to bring this awareness into the traveler who's coming into India, or even our domestic travelers.
Mr. Joglekar, last word from you. For long we've had this Buddhist circuit in place. We've had wonderful Buddhist pilgrimage places, but without even an air connectivity in places like Sanchi, which is considered very special by Buddhist community, especially the international Buddhist community. So what are the mistakes that India has made in the last 50, 70 years? Because you spoke about good practices. What are the things that we should be avoiding?
I think absolutely right. One of the biggest. I would say one of the missed opportunities for the 50 to 70 years has been, not developing religious tourism well enough. People were coming in from far off, from Myanmar and all of this, the Buddhist circuit, as you rightly call it, to Gaya, and so on. I think this is an opportunity that will unlock a lot of foreign currency exchange into India. One of the key things that India needs to ensure that we don't repeat is we should ensure that our cleanliness standards are well maintained. One thing that we notice outside India is the kind of attention to detail from a cleanliness perspective. Two is the overall experience. How are you ensuring crowd management? How are you ensuring little things like availability of accommodation, availability of an online clear website, for example, wherein you can learn about basic things. And the third and the most important part should be how are you positioning yourself as well? There has to be some festival that links all of these things. Why only the Buddhist circuit? Can't there be a Hindu circuit? Can't there be a other religions also equally represented in this regard?
So clearly, there are many challenges, but of course, we also have good practices to learn from Ayodhya on way to become the next global religious hub for India and could actually boost India's religious tourist economy. Thank you, all of you, for joining us on this discussion on NDTV. Moving on, Ram Mandir Trust has finalized an ambitious plan to set up 30 new grand temples after the